When we talk about IoT, we have to have in mind that these devices are mainly low-power devices, and as most of such carry-out devices we have to take into consideration their battery life endurance. As a most used not written rule, IoT devices are intended to have a 10 years battery life, so as to support massive deployment schemes with limited human intervention. How can we harvest the energy consumption of the devices during an OTA update? Some key features to achieve higher battery life are listed below, and we will look deeper into each one in the next slides. Send small amounts of data. Send messages less frequently. Use the low spreading factor, LoRaWAN. PSM and extended discontinuous reception, DRX, in NB-IoT. When the device is made to send small data payload, it means it needs to be powered up for less time. While it is correct that LoRa assures lower power usage, transmitting data consumes power. Besides, many LoRa sensor devices come with a radio chip and separate microcontroller. These two use power. But when less data is being sent, it takes less time, and this equals less usage of power. Sending data must be done in a way that the minimum amount possible is sent. This can be achieved by cleverly encoding your data. By sending messages in a less frequent time frame, the device is in its lower power consumption mode, sleeping mode, for a longer time. If we manage to harvest the frequency where the device will wake up to send the messages, the battery will inevitably last longer. That is why a best practice is when taking readings from sensors, especially when you do not expect the values to change frequently, you need to reduce the frequency of the sending messages. Spreading factor, a key characteristic in LoRaWAN, long-range WAN, that can make or break your IoT solution. Finding the right spreading factor is crucial for realizing long-term performance of a device. The network decides the spreading factor, graded between 7 to 12, based on the environmental conditions between the communication device and the gateway. This number represents the speed of a frequency change in a chirp. Thus, the spreading factor affects the data transfer rate and demodulation SNR, signal-to-noise ratio. When data is spread more, meaning a higher spreading factor, it can be demodulated with a lower SNR value. Modulation is the process of combining the low-frequency signal with a very high-frequency radio wave called carrier wave, CW. The resultant wave is called modulated carrier wave. Demodulation, on the other hand, that is mentioned above, is the process of separating or recovering the signal from the modulated carrier wave. The higher the spreading factor value will have a huge effect on the device battery life. The lowest possible spreading factor you can use is the holy grail in mastering your battery's life. NB-IoT, or narrowband IoT, has long been heralded as the enabler of very low-power IoT applications, promising a decade of connectivity on a single battery. Optimized for the infrequent transmission of small amounts of data, the technology caters to wide-ranging use cases that include smart utility metering, smart cities, logistics and asset tracking, and agricultural and environmental applications. What is it that we have to harden so as to achieve the optimal 10-year battery life? The most significant features of battery-powered NB-IoT devices are the following. Power Saving Mode, PSM, which is basically a deep sleep operation for an end device. The PSM mode is activated after the expiration of a timer, which determines for how long the end device will monitor paging before entering in PSM. Although when in deep sleep state, the device is unreachable by the network, it stays registered to it. The energy consumption in this state can be minimized to a level that is even lower than the idle mode. PSM brings current consumption down to below 3 microampere. It uses release assistance to signal to the network that the module doesn't expect a downlink response to its uplink message. That way it can be released from the network immediately rather than waiting between 6 and 20 seconds for the connection to time out due to inactivity. Additionally, PSM allows the device to keep its registration details when it goes to sleep, preventing it from having to go through the power-hungry process of reattaching to the radio network for each new communication. The second significant feature is the extended discontinuous reception, EDRX. EDRX is defined in LTE Release 13 and it provides longer inactive periods between reading, paging, or controlling channels for the end device. Its difference with respect to PSM mode is that the node occasionally enters into receiving mode, waits for inbound messages and the device is reachable by network. When using EDRX, the mobile network operator's IoT platform stores any messages that comes in, while the device is in the low power state and forwards them to the device when it awakens. It's worth mentioning that EDRX can also be used without PSM, in particular for applications that need to receive messages at unknown times. By hardening these features we may be able to hit the decade battery life target.